Good evening. My name is Lucille Songhai from the MTA. I will serve as this evening's hearing officer for this virtual public hearing, the fourth of 8 virtual hearings, including 2 satellite hearings, to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on the proposed changes in MTA fares and tolls affecting transportation on MTA subways, buses, commuter railroads, bridges and tunnels, and the Staten Island Railway. To make the public aware of these hearings, advertisements were published in 13 print media outlets, including multilingual outlets throughout the region. Notice of these hearings were also published in press releases and posted on the MTA website, along with multilingual signs and digital displays in stations, buses, and trains. The MTA also provided notice of the hearings on social media. The MTA's Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings, describes these proposals in detail. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we are conducting this meeting virtually via Zoom's online platform and conference call feature, with a live stream available on the MTA Fare and Toll Hearing website. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.76 permits the MTA to conduct these fare and toll hearings remotely. This hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the proposals. Members of the MTA Board of Directors and senior staff are here to listen. So board members will be listening, but not commenting. MTA subject matter experts are available to answer your question in the Zoom Q&A function this evening. The Q&A function is available only if you are logged into the Zoom webinar online, and it is located on the lower portion of your Zoom window. If you are attending via Zoom online, type your question into the Q&A function, and a subject matter expert will answer your question if it is deemed to pertain to the subject of this hearing. In addition to the remaining virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding fares and crossing charges virtual public hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. I should emphasize that every bit of public comment, including spoken comments today and at other hearings, all correspondence, emails, phone calls, and comments will be transcribed and incorporated into the official record and provided to all of the board members so that they can review them prior to final consideration of the fare and toll proposals. For the record today's date is December 7th, 2020. The time is 5:35 p.m. Now, let me briefly describe the procedure for today's hearing. I will call the names of people who have registered to speak in the order in which they are registered. The one exception here is that if you have already spoken at a virtual public hearing during this round of hearings, you will be moved to the end of the queue after all registrants who have not spoken at a previous virtual public hearing have had an opportunity to speak. We opened registration for today's hearing on Monday, November 23rd, 2020 at 10 a.m., and registration closed at 5 p.m. yesterday. We will remain here until all registered speakers are heard. All participants will be muted upon joining the Zoom webinar. When your name is called, please enable your camera and microphone by clicking the camera and microphone icons on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will give you 10 seconds to turn your camera and microphone on before moving on to the next speaker. In the event your name is called and you are not present, we will read your name again in the order it was initially called at the end of the list of pre-registered speakers. We will close the proceedings 15 minutes after the last name is called once we exhaust the list of speakers. When you begin speaking, please provide us your name and any affiliation you wish to announce so that we have it for the record. And this is important so that we can be fair to all speakers. We ask that you keep your remarks to our limit of 2 minutes. The countdown clock on the screen will provide auditory and visual cues when there are 30 seconds remaining to conclude your remarks. If you run out of time, please remember you can submit complete written testimony to supplement your oral testimony. CART captioning and American Sign Language interpreters are available at this hearing. To access captioning at the bottom of the screen, select CC, and you will be able to turn on or enlarge the captions based on your preference. You can also view the entire transcript for context if needed. Users will not need to adjust their screens to see ASL. Again, I want to note that in addition to the remaining virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fair and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding fares and crossing charges virtual public hearing to Broadway, New York, New York 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Thank you all for listening to all of that. And now let me introduce the MTA Board of Directors and senior executive staff that are here with us today. Tonight, we are joined by the following MTA board members: Commissioners Albert, Brown, Calise, Glucksman, Herman, Jones, Law, and Lynn. MTA leadership is represented this evening by MTA Chairman Pat Foy, Bob Ferran, Tom Quigley, Mario Peliquin, Sarah Feinberg, Craig Cipriano, Daniel DiCrescenzo, Kathy Rinaldi, and Phil Ng. I will now turn it over to MTA Chairman and CEO Pat Foy for opening remarks.
Thanks, Lucille. Thank you all for being with us virtually this evening as we continue the MTA's standard biennial review of fare and toll policy. We recognize that this year is anything but standard. The pandemic has affected and impacted us all in profound and lasting ways, which makes this process all the more complex and challenging. Since 2011, the MTA has implemented fare adjustments roughly every 2 years, and a proposed change to fares and tolls with a 4% revenue yield, equal to 2% a year, has been previously included in next year's budget. To be clear, the current fare proposals are not intended to address our current financial crisis caused by COVID-19. As you know, as a result of COVID-19, the MTA is facing the worst financial crisis in its history, far exceeding anything we've ever dealt with in the past, even worse than the Great Depression. Because of precipitous declines in revenue and ridership, we're facing a projected $16 billion deficit over the next few years. We have aggressively sought additional emergency aid from the federal government to fill our budget gap, but have so far been unsuccessful. The election of President-elect Joe Biden has given us hope on that front, but we are still facing the prospect of divided government in Washington, which could threaten the progress of another stimulus package with enough support for what the transit agency needs, transit industry needs. So we must plan for the worst and hope for the best. This means we have some very tough decisions ahead, which could include service changes and reductions in position, and a continued freeze of the capital program. To be clear, we at the MTA don't want to take any of these actions, but our dire financial outlook gives us no other choice. We are committed to reviewing a wide variety of options to find the best way forward and adjusting plans as needed based on the latest developments. For the topic at hand this evening, the biennial fare and toll policy review, our goal is to minimize impact on New Yorkers in these difficult times. Still, we know that any increase will hurt New Yorkers, especially those in areas that depend on the MTA most. It's clear that this is one of the most uncertain and challenging times ever, not just for the MTA, but for all of us. We appreciate you taking your time this evening to make your voices heard on these proposals. This is a tough time for all New Yorkers, but we remain dedicated to keeping this region moving, as our employees have done tirelessly and heroically this entire year. The MTA remains on high alert and will do everything we can to minimize health and safety risk to our customers and our employees as we continue navigating through these uncharted waters. We look forward to hearing from all of you today. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Chairman Foy. Tonight, we have 68 registered speakers. We will now call our first public speaker of the evening. As a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you have registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A feature. Again, when your name is called, there will be a brief transition to allow you to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Our first speaker this evening is Senator Anna Kaplan, followed by Assemblymember Eric Dillon.
Good evening. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented challenges and hardship for all Americans. And as we continue to deal with the crisis at hand, and as our broader economy continues to struggle to recover, we simply cannot afford to raise fares on hardworking Long Islanders and essential workers who have continued to show up for our community throughout this pandemic. As we look ahead to deal with the fiscal crisis the MTA is facing because of pandemic-related increases in operation costs and decreases in ridership, it would be wrong to put the burden on the backs of Long Islanders and the riding public. And it would only further drive passengers to alternatives like driving or working from home. Additionally, our long-term economic recovery will rely on the MTA's ability to provide the level of service necessary to keep our region moving. And as such, staffing and service cuts should be off the table. It is imperative that the federal government steps in and support the MTA to avoid draconian cuts and fare hikes, which could hurt our entire region and stifle our recovery. And I continue to call on the federal government to do so with the urgency. Thank you, and thank you for having this event.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Assemblymember Eric Dillon, followed by New York Assembly-elect Michael Tanusis.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to take my time to go on record opposing any increases to any of your subway or bus fares or any hikes to bridges and tunnels. I understand that the MTA is facing unprecedented budget gaps in the area of around $16 billion. And a gap of this size can't possibly be closed by the backs of ridership alone. It's very clear that the federal government needs to step in here. And as a result of the election, which the election should have no impact on this, I'm more optimistic of how New York will be treated by the federal stimulus or relief package. I'm more confident that its authorities and localities will be treated much better than a few months ago. In light of this, I'm simply just asking that this package be laid aside. I think everyone in the country knows that New York provides more to federal coffers than it receives back in aid, and that is the economic heartbeat of this country. And everyone should know that the MTA is a vital artery to that heart. New York City and New York State, it's vital to the city and state, but to the region because New Jersey and Connecticut also depends on it, which increases our case for federal aid. I believe the federal government will come through in a major way, and with the majority of people financially hurting via the loss of a loved one or income or business, we must pause and see the entire picture before we consider increases. I fear that these increases could give Washington a reason to turn its back on New York and the MTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is New York Assembly Member-elect Michael Tanusis, followed by Matt Camper.
Fellow taxpayers. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen of the MTA board, fellow taxpayers and concerned citizens, my name is Michael Tanusis, and I come before you today as the Assembly Member-elect for the 64th Assembly District, which encompasses the East Shore of Staten Island and Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I am also a lifelong Staten Islander. I want to say today that New Yorkers are fed up. We have all suffered in one way or another from this pandemic and continue to do so, financially, socially, and emotionally. This year has been a tough year for all of us, but it seems that it's only getting worse. After all the challenges that Staten Islanders have had to face, now we face the potential of losing the much-needed Staten Island resident discount. We live in the greatest city in the world, yet Staten Islanders cannot be provided with reliable transportation services to other parts of the city. That is unacceptable. The potential loss of the Staten Island resident discount is a continuous battle that Staten Islanders continue to fight year after year. We, the taxpayers of the forgotten borough, must continuously fight to keep our resident discount. Staten Islanders deserve better, and the MTA needs to do better. I do not support the elimination of the resident discount programs, and I certainly do not support another fare hike or toll hike. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is Matt Camper, followed by Jason Anthony.
You guys hear me? Hello?
Is this Matt Camper?
You guys can hear me?
We can hear you. Please begin.
Okay, perfect. Good evening. My name is Matt Camper, and I'm a regional director for the Long Island Railroad for Passengers United. And I'm here tonight as a concerned resident of Long Island, as the Long Island Railroad prices over the last 10 or 12 years alone has gone up by an average of 10%, which is outrageous for us Long Island Railroad riders. And I think it is absolutely time that we do not have a fair increase. And I understand my fellow riders do not want that, and I feel the same way. However, imagine if we don't have a fair increase across the board. We are going to be in a worse situation, and we may have more devastating service cuts than we are looking at potentially right now. And I feel, as a Long Island Railroad rider, the flat fare proposal is outrageous to us Nassau County residents, as we would have to pay for an off-peak fare round trip $8.50 more over to $29 instead of paying $20.50 now, which is an outrage to us Nassau County residents. Well, people in Suffolk County get a discount. That's not fair to us, right? Why do we have to pay more while Suffolk County residents pay less? It should be fair to everyone. And I do not support a flat fare proposal. Us at Pastors United propose a 4% increase across the board, as that is the fairest option and the least impactful to us riders, and it's the fairest to everyone. I hope you can consider this, and I will discuss regarding the budget at the board meeting next week. Thank you so much.
Just as a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you have registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function. Our next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Stuart Goldstein.
Good evening, MTA board and leadership. Jason Anthony from Vice President, Passengers United. I'm gonna have one message for all those state elected officials, and that is, please take a train from Penn Station to Union Station in DC and walk to Capitol Hill to meet with your fellow peers, because this is the place for us writers to express our feelings. Second of all, the MTA is spending a lot of money in consultants, and we're talking about over 100 consultants, including Anthony McCord. And I have said since day one, Anthony McCord doesn't belong in the MTA. And also, I'll support the elimination of the unlimited Metro cards. And we are the only US jurisdiction that doesn't have a 1-day pass. So we should reinstate the 1-day pass for those tourist people that cannot afford the 7-day pass, so that we could support the tourism in New York City. And my last point will be to all those New York State legislatures, please pass a gas tax. We need a gas tax, just like New Jersey did to support New Jersey Transit. We need a gas tax now in New York. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stuart Goldstein, followed by Linda Baran.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Goldstein, and I'm speaking on behalf of the New York City Transit Riders Council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. The MTA is in a dire financial situation and needs $12 billion from the federal government to get through 2021. Without that infusion of funding, consequences to riders will be devastating. The riders we represent are already hurting. That's why we cannot support discussions regarding fare hikes at this time, regardless of the scheduled biennial increases. We don't see how you could vote on fare increases without knowing what service will look like. We do know that paying 4% more for 40% less is a terrible trade-off, and the timing could not be worse. The region's riders, especially low-income families and our brave essential workers, cannot be hit with a fare hike at this time, or many will be forced to find other travel options, ultimately hurting the MTA with ever-decreasing ridership. It isn't the time to give them an excuse to stay off trains and buses, but to encourage them to get back on board. The MTA has a unique opportunity to attract riders back responsibly and safely by providing fair discounts. We know some MTA board members support such incentives. For example, the Transit Riders Council inspired the Atlantic ticket and that's been quite popular with riders. It provides discounted fares on the LIRR. These are unprecedented times that require unprecedented actions and our complete rethinking of how we fund, operate, and provide transit to our region's riders. We need stimulus, congestion pricing, and access to the funds that Washington can provide. But right now, we don't need talk of a fare hike. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Linda Baran, followed by Sean Abraham.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Linda. Please begin.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that. Okay, good evening. My name is Linda Barron, President of the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber and our 600 business members who employ over 20,000 people, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Most importantly, I'm here to express our concern with any changes that may affect the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge Staten Island Resident Discount and Rebate Program, as well as the Commercial Vehicles Rebate Program. As you know, Staten Island is home to over 500,000 New Yorkers. Long before the COVID-19 pandemic caused budget problems for the MTA and our city, our borough lacked its fair share of investment in transit and transportation projects. For years, we have paid disproportionately into a transit system that offers little return on our investment. Staten Island is a very car-dependent borough, not because it wants to be, but because we have limited transit options. If a resident chooses to drive over the only land-based connection to the rest of the city, the Verrazano Bridge, they must pay a hefty toll. Other boroughs have numerous subway lines that connect to Manhattan and elsewhere, but Staten Island has only one single passenger rail line that services only the easternmost portion of the island with no direct connection to Manhattan or any other area in the region. Communities in other parts of the city can pay a single base fare, currently $3 for a bus or subway to connect to Manhattan. Staten Islanders do not have a choice but to pay the highest express bus fare, currently $6.75 each way when leaving the borough. Whether traveling to and from work, school, to the doctor, or simply to visit a relative, they are often enduring arduous commutes. For residents traveling by bus or train to the Free Staten Island Ferry from various parts of the island, it could easily take an hour to get there, and that may only be the first leg of their trip. In other parts of the city, cars, trucks, and commercial vans pay nothing to cross some of the East River bridges. We, on the other hand, are uniquely positioned between the cash-strapped MTA and the cash-strapped Port Authority and pay some of the highest tolls in the entire country. And to make matters worse, our fare and toll money goes to fund projects outside of Staten Island. Despite it all, we do not see the MTA scrambling to toll any of the East River bridges to make up for budget shortfalls. Many of our local businesses are being decimated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Commercial tolls have a huge impact on their bottom line. We know that we all pay more for a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread because the truck that carried it here had to cross High Toll Bridge. With record thin profit margins and business owners hanging on by a thread, any additional increases will be passed along to the consumer, ultimately affecting us all. We understand that the MTA is seeing diminished ridership, but people from Staten Island opting to use their own vehicles should not have to make up for the significant loss in fare revenue that the MTA is seeing, nor should a community that lacks sufficient transit options and suffers some of the longest commutes in the country. While the Chamber commends our local elected delegation for fighting to retain the Staten Island resident and commercial discounts time and time again, we understand that these discounts are not set in stone. Our community cannot afford the elimination of the reduction of the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge Staten Island resident discount and rebate programs, nor can we afford to lose the commercial vehicles rebate program. We implore the MTA board to keep these important programs in place
Thank you
at their
so
current
much.
level. Even if the federal...
Thank you so much for your comment. Our next speaker is Sean Abraham, followed by Guillermo Cancio.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, my name is Sean Abraham, and I'm a senior at the Macaulay Honors College of the College of Staten Island, and also a student gov senator for CSI and for Macaulay Honors College. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I know that the MTA, as well as our local and state government, are facing a budget crisis, and although this crisis has been looming for quite some time, it is now more than ever that we should not move to remove our resident discount. And it's not just government and government agencies that are facing this issue, but also students and public servants who are also struggling. We are all hurting and dealing with this pandemic. For a person who travels 5 times a day, the numbers are clear. If a discount is removed, people will have to pay about $1,600 more. Now, with students who travel through the borough of New York City, such as Manhattan and Brooklyn, and even as far as Bronx and Queens, we not only have to worry about gas, but are also burdened by the toll. These changes are not only going to make it worse. Students who struggle financially every semester to pay for tuition, textbooks, supplies, and with this proposal, will hurt students even more. In order to make ends meet, some students even find themselves working full-time, as well as trying to manage a full-time school schedule. There is no leeway or discounted prices for students, which is a discussion for another day. These costs are clearly getting too high to handle. With unemployment at an all-time high and with 1 in 4 New Yorkers currently unemployed, we aren't that lucky when it comes to other boroughs, when it comes to public transportation. We are a transportation desert, and we don't have a subway system that connects us to the New York City system. Our bridge is known for one thing around the country, and that is being one of the largest suspension bridges in America, but also known as the highest toll in the country. For an island surrounded by water, the only way of driving out of the borough is through a bridge. And all of you have worked in government know that once a program is canceled, it is very unlikely to see it come back. I ask all of you today, when you consider this discount, that you think of our situation as a borough with the lack of transportation that connects us to New York City and keep our discount. Thank you, and thank you for having this event. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Guillermo Cancio, followed by Robert Brown.
Thank you very much, everyone, for doing this event and with the technological challenges. I spoke, I don't know, about a year and a half ago at the last town hall that you guys had in Brooklyn when you were considering the other fare hike. And my message then, and is the same as my message now, except that now it's more dire. And I posit it as a question. Why is the MTA considering raising fares and raising tolls when the MTA has made little to no effort to control its costs? The Transportation Workers Union and the other related unions for the railroad, the bus company, the subway, and all the other entities are draining the MTA dry, and the citizens that depend on the MTA to move about the city and move about the region are the ones that are suffering. I ask you, for the benefit of the community at large, that you guys, that the MTA and the board of directors really clamp down hard on the costs of doing business for the MTA. Cut down on overtime, strictly enforce work rules, eliminate unnecessary work rules, and really, it's really up to me, I would disband the Transportation Workers Union. But really now's the time, because they don't have leverage, because people aren't using transportation or public transit as much. But please cut costs and stick it to these overpaid union workers that are sucking the blood dry out of the communities in New York City and the region.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Brown, followed by Pavel Kutsevel. Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you. My name is Robert Brown, and I'm a Staten Island resident, and I'm speaking against the elimination of the Staten Island resident discount. I understand that the MTA has a $12 billion deficit to close, and the elimination of all MTA resident discounts will save about $65 million a year. That's all discounts, not just Staten Island, but that's just a drop in the bucket. Just a few months ago, we were applauding first responders and how they helped us through COVID. Nurses, healthcare workers, these are the people that are in Staten Island that have to drive to work in Maimonides Hospital or Lutheran or Methodist or Woodhull or a nursing home. We have small business owners who are affected by COVID and their workers. We have people that want to visit relatives in Brooklyn or that want to shop in small businesses that won't be able to because of the elimination of this resident discount. There are no mass transit alternatives to Brooklyn and Queens from Staten Island. And if they were to take mass transit, they'd risk getting COVID. I'm not talking about Staten Islanders commuting to Manhattan. You could easily use congestion pricing in order to raise money in order to do that. The MTA could also close the gap by making train riders pay. and stopping turnstile jumpers. Rarely in this day and age do Republicans and Democrats agree on much. Here we have Assemblymember Michael Cusick, Andrew Lanza, Diane Savino, Mike Riley, Charles Fall, Joe Borelli, Debbie Rose, James Otto, all agree that eliminating this would be a bad idea. I noticed that you're all from upstate, and I would say to you, imagine if your county, or upstate or Long Island, if your county were encircled by Easy Pass and you'd have to pay, if your residents would have to pay to come home every single night. Governor Cuomo said that he was going to make this permanent, and he didn't. What happened? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pavel Katsevel, followed by Jeremy Vargas. Pavel Katsevis is our next speaker. Just as a reminder to please unmute your microphone and to unveil your camera. Our next speaker is Pavel Katsevel. Our next speaker is Jeremy Vargas. Mr. Vargas,
Yes.
you can begin.
All right. My name's Jeremy Vargas. I live in Yonkers. As somebody who works in Manhattan and doesn't have the means to drive, I'm primarily dependent on the bus and Metro North, and many who are typically not listened to in these contexts are often dependent on the bus. And already before the pandemic, service levels and infrastructure were already in need of improvement, and the fares have already been rising too rapidly. So to raise all these fares now and propose all these service cuts while New Yorkers are suffering due to the pandemic would absolutely devastate the working class. It's going to be disproportionately low-income New Yorkers, especially, who will be priced out of mobility. So I'm calling on the MTA board and the state government to seek any means necessary to fill these budget gaps. While the COVID-19 pandemic is obviously complicates this massively, the budget should not be balanced on the backs of working class New Yorkers. Whatever needs to be legalized, so whatever consultants need to be removed from the budget, whatever taxes need to be raised on the wealthy, and all of the state government, the MTA board, and Governor Cuomo must look at all these options before even thinking about balancing the budget on the backs of working class New Yorkers. Both the city and the state and all the other towns would be devastated economically by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patrick Johnson, followed by Bob D.
Can you hear me?
We
Okay.
can.
So I'm a Staten Island resident. We have to find a way to make up the money. The Staten Island resident toll discount to double our tolls every month is too much. We got to raise the money on advertising on buses and subways. You got to add a surcharge for Uber. I mean, these people are taking, I mean, my business alone, the film industry, they don't want people taking trains or buses. They're paying for their Uber cars. So we gotta pass the money on to the people who are driving from Manhattan to Brooklyn and into Borough. We don't have a choice on Staten Island. You're not just going to raise our tolls double because we have a car. I mean, I got to be at work at the Brooklyn Navy Yard at 6 o'clock in the morning For me to be there by taking mass transit, I gotta leave my house by like 4:30 in the morning, even earlier. I mean, I get no sleep. Then I come home. It's gonna be like a 14-hour day after working 10 hours. You know, the commuting from the middle of Staten Island into Brooklyn, into Greenpoint or Williamsburg is just ridiculous by mass transit. You're talking 2.5 hours each way. I understand that the MTA is having problems because nobody's taking subways, but you got to start sponsoring subway stations and bus lines. You know, call it the Chase bus line for a month. See what they can do. And you got to renegotiate these Omni contracts. I mean, they're going to be making money hand over fist. They're going to have the contract. Metro cards are going away. You got to renegotiate with Omni so they're making less money and that the money's going back into the MTA coffers. You got to add driver's license fees. When people will have to get a new driver's license, there's got to be a surcharge on to get a driver's license to make up some of the difference here. We got to find any kind of way to make up the money. And we can't do this flex time stuff for the tolls on the Verrazano. You're not going to say from 6 to 9 a.m. you're going to charge more money or from 3 to 7 p.m. I mean, that's just...
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Bob D., followed by Jackie Liang.
Hello.
Yes, is this Bob D.?
Yeah, it's actually Francisco Roberto, but they have me down as Bob D. Good evening, everyone. I'm also a Staten Island resident. I really don't see why we have to raise the tolls, especially on the Verrazano Bridge. It's already the most expensive bridge in the country. As a resident here, as a Staten Islander, we pay a lot for everything, and we are the forgotten borough. They have to find another way around this. One accident anywhere on that expressway causes a massive pileup, a long time. I work 25 miles away. It takes me sometimes 2 hours just to get to work, but I'm willing to go through all of that, you know, to take care of my family. But MTA has to find a better way. I understand that there were some people getting illegal overtime and whatnot on with the MTA. We need to, I don't know who's watching those guys. They need to crack down on stuff like that. We're losing money left and right. We need to monitor all of that stuff. But as a resident of Staten Island, I just feel like they need to take care of us a lot better. And raising the tolls on the Staten Island is just not fair. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jackie Liang, followed by Alexa Jacob. Jackie Liang, please unmute your microphone, please. Our next speaker is Grant Van Weingarten, followed by Alexa Jacob. Grant.
Good evening. My name is Grant Van Weingarten. I'm a Suffolk County resident, and prior to the pandemic, I frequently commuted to Midtown Manhattan for work. Since March, I have not been an MTA customer, but I'm hopeful that this pandemic will soon be over and that you'll see me again soon on your trains. When that happens, if you implement the alternate flat fare proposal, your revenues from me will be lower. You are proposing to give me a discount of $10 per day. If anyone should be in favor of this proposal, it's me, but I'm not in favor of it. This fare reduction could be justified by a cross subsidy from non-peak riders and those who live closer to the city, but they have more options than I do. Their demand is more elastic. If you raise their prices, you will lose some ridership. I, on the other hand, have the option of sitting on the train or on the LIE for hours. Riders like me with fewer options have inelastic demand and a higher willingness to pay. This proposal will not change our riding behavior. If anything, it will just give us more money to spend on beer for the ride home. If you ask my wife, that is a bad idea. You should be charging me more. To maximize your revenues, you need price discrimination. Charge more for customers that are willing to pay more, add and charge for services that customers value. For example, the commuter parking. I cannot believe how many free and unrestricted parking lots you have. For a single spot close to the station, you could easily charge several $100s a month for reservations. Transit agencies around the world are doing this already. The MTA should too. There are many more opportunities like this. You just need to be creative and find ways to monetize your existing assets. Good luck, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexa Jacob, followed by Giselle Blanco.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can.
Great. My name is Alexa Jacob, and I am a transit writer, and I'm also a member of the Sunrise Movement's New York City Hub. The Sunrise Movement is a movement of young people trying to stop climate change by passing a Green New Deal and creating good jobs in the process. I'm a college student, and I use the MTA subways, buses, and Metro North commuter rail to travel to school and to visit my family. So the MTA is important to me because I use it to get everywhere because I can't drive. I oppose the MTA's proposal to raise fares on commuters like myself because raising fares means it will be more expensive for me to travel to school and to visit my family. Again, I don't have a car, I can't drive, so I need you guys to get around. And if fares rise, that means that I will travel less and walk longer distances, which isn't always feasible. So that'll be harmful to both the system and to me. I know that the MTA needs help, but it shouldn't come at the expense of working people. Additionally, as someone who cares about climate change and is organizing with the Sunrise Movement, I know that transit will play a massive role in New York City's recovery from the coronavirus and in stopping climate change. Public transit is essential, and to quote from your mission statement, it enhances the quality of life and economic health of our region. If we raise fares, our essential workers and most vulnerable populations will bear the brunt, which is far from the just recovery that we need. Simply put, raising fares will hurt us in the long term. We need to fully fund transit and make it accessible to all. As such, I urge leadership in the board to vote against any fare increases and against eliminating time-based passes that are so essential for commuters. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Giselle Blanco, followed by Philistine Travis.
Hello. My statement today, I'm a resident of Queens. I just wanted to echo the thoughts of many of my other fellow speakers. I oppose any fare hikes, any increases in tolls, any removals in special pricing. In Staten Island, despite me not living there, I can for sure empathize with people who live there. I just cannot comprehend that the federal government could let the MTA fail. Many years ago, we were told that, the big banks were too big to fail. I think that the MTA is too big to fail. This should definitely be a priority for the federal government. I also want to echo the message of another writer that is passionate about climate change. The MTA is essential to lower our carbon impact for the city. So I definitely think that, if the fares are increased, many riders are going to find alternate solutions that will for sure increase pollution. So yeah, I definitely oppose changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Philistine Travis, followed by Robert Vidal.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You can begin.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm against the increases. I have the luxury of being able to work remotely part-time. I'm going in 3 days a week, but I'm working remotely part-time. Not everybody has that luxury. I think it's unfair to try to make up the deficit on the backs of the people who depend on public transit to get to their jobs. And in my mind, that the majority of those folks are the essential workers. And I sympathize with the MTA and any organization who's trying to manage and balance the pandemic and the financial impacts it's having on the leadership and all the people working. But I would beg, like some other people says, that you find other creative ways to either cut spending and try to balance out the impact of this year. This year's been pretty intense for all of us on lots of different levels. So if you could find other creative ways to fill the gap, I'd be appreciative and thankful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Vidal, followed by Lily Ahaje.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, hello, Commissioner, and the MTA staff. I'd like to echo some of the sentiments of Michael Tenosis and Linda Barron and Sean Abraham. I would like to wholeheartedly express my opposition to the elimination of the Staten Island Verrazano Bridge resident discount. I have no affiliation other to say that I am an average Staten Island resident. I'm an average Joe. And I need to remind you guys, and for those of you who don't live here, that Staten Island is the only borough that you can't get into and out of for free by, driving. My parents still live in Brooklyn. People who are going over the Verrazano Bridge right now, especially during COVID, are doing so because they have to. They either have to work, they have to go take care of relatives that live in another borough. And the elimination of Staten Island discount would really hurt me financially. Prior to COVID, I would travel into Brooklyn and Manhattan 3, 4, 5 times per week. And on average, I was paying $300 plus. Even now, just going to see my parents a few times a week, I'm still paying $200 or more a month just to travel within my own city, which is totally unreasonable as it is. So please keep me in mind, and please keep all the regular Joes that travel over the Verrazano Bridge in mind when making your decisions. And I would just, again, like to express my complete opposition to the Staten Island resident, elimination of the Staten Island resident discount. Thank you, and I really appreciate your time. I understand that you all have a monumental task right now in trying to figure out your budgets, but this type of elimination would really hurt the average people like myself. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lily Elhaje, followed by D. Smith.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I have 2 comments to make. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and listening. It's a long deal tonight. The first thing is, I'm not understanding why are they raising the rates on fares. I do HR and payroll for an ambulance company, and we have a transit check program for people to use public transportation, and now you are disencouraging the use of public transportation and now you will be encouraging congestion. They have a program, now you're telling them it's useless, just take your car. And in regards to Staten Island residents, I don't know why we should lose the discount. We didn't do we are being penalized only for being Staten Island residents. We're not criminals, we're not thieves. All we are Staten Island residents. We have bills to pay. I have a toll bridge that I have to pay, and I'm getting penalized just for living on the island. I have people who purchase something new get tax abatements, and we're not getting anything in return. I think the least they can do is give us the Staten Island resident program. They should find money. I worked in my company. I know there are changes in companies that can be made to find money. It has to start from the top. It has to start with overtime. It has to start with expenses being used, that they have to look at that. It comes from management. It does not come from the people. You should not be penalizing us. We're only human, we're only workers, and I work for an ambulance company. I work for an essential company, and we should be getting a break more than anything, but most of Staten Island are essential workers, and you're going to take that away from them. During COVID, when many people were home, I had to go back to work. Although I do not work on the ambulance, I had to be at work every day, and I didn't get any incentive for crossing the bridge, and now it's looking to be removed from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dee Smith, followed by Jorge Vigo.
Hey, thanks a lot. Hey, I did my research, and the MTA doesn't have a funding problem, they have a spending problem. I mean, every time a house is sold in New York State, the MTA gets paid. Every time somebody uses a taxi, the MTA gets a cut of that. Every time I look on my gas bill, there's an MTA surcharge. So the MTA is getting enough revenue from different sources than just the turnstiles and the buses. So how can a company or organization that earns $billions a year not turn a profit? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, even if you need to cut the pensions 20%, whatever you need to do, that should be the first thing you should look at instead of raising the fares that you've done so all the time. It's not fair to the average worker. And if anyone's listening out there, you do not have to pay this fare. I mean, hop the turnstile. They can't stop everyone. They're just robbing us for no reason. Look inside. You have enough funding sources to pay the bills. Just spend the money wisely. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jorge Vigo, followed by Lou Simon.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mr. Vigo.
Hi. So tonight, I thank you guys for giving me the chance to talk. This is in reference to the Staten Island resident discount and the tolls overall. I feel that it's very unfair that you guys want to raise the tolls for us being the working class when in reality I keep seeing in the comments, someone keeps writing that we have the lowest toll for a bridge, but the last time I checked, I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge and it's free. The Manhattan Bridge is free. If I want to take the tunnel, those are options that I want to choose to pay to go on if I need to. But as a resident in Staten Island, there's no way for me to get off this island without paying. So I feel that it's very unfair that you guys want to raise our prices and take away our discount when, like a gentleman previously stated, there are articles coming out about overtime fraud in the MTA and people stealing from you guys. And it's true as far as your contracts go, because there are a lot of times where I see a lot of work being done and there's one person working and 5 people watching. So it all comes down to being accountable as to where the funds actually are going and the accountability of who we're hiring to do the work. And as someone previously mentioned before, there are a lot of work that can be done by MTA employees, but are contracted out for whatever reason and for whoever's benefit. But at the end of the day, we're the ones paying for it. And it's very unfair. And I feel like, if you guys want to raise tolls, how about put a toll on the Brooklyn Bridge or up by Yonkers? We get some more tolls up there with people who have more money than us. So thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a great night.
We've been joined this evening in our hearing by Commissioner Zuckerman. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next speaker is Lou Simon, followed by Michael Davies.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good evening. My name is Lou Simon. I'm the Assembly District Leader in the 23rd Assembly District. I'm asking everyone to please sit tight. We have a new administration coming in with President Biden. Let's see what happens. I believe it will work out. Everyone is definitely feeling the pain with the pandemic and having to choose between eating, paying the rent, and paying bills. So many people are unemployed. Please, please don't raise the fares or tolls. No service cuts, no layoffs. Let's wait this out. And please, I implore of you, I represent the 23rd Assembly District in Queens. We cannot lose that Q53 service. That is extremely important to us. So I ask everyone, please, let's put this on hold. Let's see if we can cut by attrition, not by layoffs and not by hurting the people. Again, Lou M. Simon, Assembly District Leader, thanking you for allowing me to speak. God bless. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa to all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Davies, followed by Shakira Green.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. Chairman Foy, members of the board, Commissioner, my name is Michael Davies, and I'm from Nassau County, Long Island. I'm a commuter that uses the Long Island Railroad and New York City subway on a daily basis. But before I get to my issue, I just want to acknowledge President Phil Lang, who I see here. Through his leadership, there's been substantial investment in the Limbrook station, which is my home station here, and I know everyone here appreciates that. But the issue I want to speak about today is the proposed flat fare rate, one for New York City and one for all the suburban counties. It's unconscionable and it's wrong. It amounts to a penalty for the hardworking people here in Nassau County. So for example, where I live, that LIRR pass is going to rise to $318 per month. And just 2 stations away over the Queens border, their tickets are going to be $182. So there seems to be a mismatch of incentives there. The hardworking residents in Nassau County shouldn't be expected to shoulder the burden for these increases or for riders anywhere else in the system, whether it's out on Long Island, upstate, Westchester, or the city. You guys are all a very talented group that were appointed by our governor, our city mayor, and various county executives. You're here to find creative solutions to these issues. I certainly think you will, but respectfully, I'm asking you to shelve that flat fare proposal. I think additional creative revenue sources need to be looked at. Certainly the expense side needs to be looked at, especially in light of all the allegations of fraud that have come to light. Just a couple of years ago, the MTA did away with alcohol sales, and that revenue was left on the table to private businesses. Doing away with those bar carts in Penn Station left millions of dollars on the table and also took away a nice little reprieve for our commuters after a long day, right, to have that nice little beverage on the way home. So let's find some alternative ways to bring in revenue, to cut costs, and not hit the working people of the New York Metro. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Shakira Green, followed by Yasmin Bensai. Shakira Green. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for providing me with this time to speak. I do understand that this is a difficult time for both commuters and for the MTA. Considering if service remains the same and hopefully layoffs will be low or none for you all, I'm for the 4% increase in the base fare and the increase in the unlimited Metro card while you continue to make efforts to obtain federal funding. I do think that there are other things that can be done in addition to this to help balance the budget. And what comes to mind the most for me is probably reducing the push for technology in the subways. And the reason why I say that is I know that it's nice to stay current and to stay modern, but I really feel, just based on my own opinion and people that I know, friends and family, we'd rather have consistent service than to have more technology if it's going to mean more increases and probably, not be good for the budget at all. But the one thing that is beneficial for us is keeping the electronic signs that tell us when the next trains are coming. With that said, although I am for the increases and hopefully we get federal funding, I would hope that the next increase would also not be anytime soon to add an additional burden to commuters. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Yasmin Bensai, followed by Shari Sanchez.
Hello, my name is Yasmin. Can you all hear me?
We can.
I'm a resident of Astoria, which is in Queens, and I do not think you guys should raise the train fare or the bus fare or any fare or the tolls, because it really does hurt the working class. I'm not sure where budget cuts could be made, but I'm sure if we do an in-depth review, some things that don't really need to be spent on. I think that the Omni, personally, I think it's kind of a waste because there's so many machines and so many of my friends and family, they all they're not gonna, they don't want it. I just think that it's so much money to build the machines when right now we should just leave the Metro cards and build it in the future when we have the money to do so. I feel like that takes up a lot of money. And also stop any cosmetic buildings. I know in Astoria 1 year ago, 2 years ago, they just did a design of it. Costs so much money to paint, and I just feel like that's not necessary. Just try to where we can save, but definitely do not raise the fare because it already is kind of high. And also with the proposed cut, then the service will also be cut as well. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shari Sanchez. And just as a reminder, there will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. So please make sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are enabled and you can begin your remarks. Additionally, as a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you have registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function. Our next speaker will be Shari Sanchez, followed by Yuki Endo.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm from Queens, New York. How is it that you are looking for a 4% to 8% fare hike when most of us commuters are still not traveling like we used to, and won't be because we're going to be deceased by the time the state reopens completely? Even when the state reopens completely, it would help if you keep in mind that most of the commuters are students and people who are not being paid a decent salary enough to survive the real world without having at least 2 jobs. How about you undo the conversion of part of the MTA budgets into gold bars and tax the wealthiest people in the tri-state area who need to use public transportation, especially if they make at least $200,000 annually? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Yuki Endo, followed by Carrie Herlihy.
Japan and alternate with a tri-state area, I oppose anti-toll fare hike because this will affect nice billion listener island academic 23-24. Another reason why I don't support fare hike is because family and community will cost more. Also, business around the long island line suffering not due to a pandemic, a terrible distortion due to a startup project with no shuttle buses provided between New Hyde Park and Hicks. Nice bus fixed buses are not connecting a train service. I have interviewed many restaurants operators along Westbury, including a some taxi company along the main line are suffering as well from no shuttle bus or train service. For future, when there is main line shutdown, with the shuttle bus, I agree all entable non unneeded PCA numbers to ride a nice bus or 22-24 between Hicks, or to see how long bus ride takes as a police provide a shuttle bus because every corridor gets a shuttle bus. Please do not cut the service on the MTA service. I also agree a cash payment on the express buses along with a Saturday express 1 day plus week instead. I do not support a national order debate discount for the Venezuela cost privilege. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Herlihy, followed by Carmelo Ramirez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie. I'm a writer from Queens. I wanted to express my my disagreement with raising any fares. First and foremost, I'm really concerned about a potential death spiral for the MTA, as we see less and less people, of course, feeling comfortable riding or needing it on a daily basis. If we continue to increase the amount that it costs for someone to ride, in addition to, we're clearly going to be facing some really serious service cuts. It's going to really not give people a reason to continue to take the MTA in large scale. And so with that, I think it's going to, continue to lessen the budget that the MTA can have, creating more service cuts and having, that downward spiral from there. So I think it's really important as we recover from this pandemic to give people a reason to take transit again. So with that, it's really essential that we find other means of acquiring cash and budget for the MTA, whether that's through parking or whether that's through gas taxes. It's something that needs to be advocated much more for. Especially when we see, lots of cleaning being done on the subway, costing lots of money, which doesn't show any effectiveness, and to continue to have budget or cops, like fare evasion cops, not off the table, which is an insane waste of money as we're spending millions to recoup much less than it costs to hire cops. So we really need to look at the budget and other means of funding before we ever make people pay more during recovery from financial and health pandemic to make sure that we have funding for the subway. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carmelo Ramirez, followed by Kasav Gupta.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. As a Staten Island resident, the reason I'm here is because I'm against the discount also. I understand the challenges we all have faced in this pandemic, but the challenges that we as Staten Island residents are facing also are these hefty prices that we're already paying for the Verrazano Bridge. On top of that challenge, we're already facing a challenge with the Easy Pass. So sometimes even overcharging us every time we cross the bridge because they can see how many passengers are in the car, especially when we have the HOA fee. HOA tag on, and sometimes they overcharge us the $19 full fare. That's another challenge where we already have. I understand that MTA is trying to get revenue, but there's many other ways to get revenues. Like example, like charging all bridges that enter into Manhattan Just Brooklyn alone has 3 bridges that go into Manhattan without, ever paying a hefty price like we do. I hate the fact that MTA thinks that we benefit from this discount. We have no option to get to work or to get home. That's the only way, to get home is just crossing the Verrazano Bridge. We don't have metro that connects to the other boroughs. And the other thing is that, as this is another example of the corporate always destroying the middle class. So they see Staten Island as also as Long Island residents as piggy banks to the city, and we tired of this. And lastly, if the MTA really needs revenue, then board members should consider not taking any raises for their salaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kasab Gupta, followed by Marzina Wolpiok.
Hello, my name is Keshav Gupta. I'm 12 years old and I'm a native New Yorker. Mass transit is essential to all New Yorkers' lives, and there's many ways you can save money that's not raising fares on the New Yorkers that rely on mass transit every day during this pandemic. If you look in your budget, you can easily get rid of $1 billion. If you look at your major capital projects, the Second Avenue subway, East Side Access, it really shouldn't be $13 billion to build a few miles of tunnel underneath Manhattan. But you can't cut out everything. As many people have said, you can't just cut your way out of this. But there's many ways where you can increase revenue, such as tolling the East River bridges, working with the DOT to toll the bridges. It's not fair that some people have to pay for bridges while others don't. And it'll make it a lot more equal. And you don't have to raise fares or raise tolls. But if you do need more revenue, you can toll highways and toll your tunnels and bridges more than you toll subways. It's not fair that the people that are riding the subways, which are the less wealthy New Yorkers, when the more wealthy New Yorkers who can afford cars, they pay less. Why is it cheaper to drive from Manhattan to Queens when it's more expensive to take the subway there? That isn't fair. You should also not get rid of unlimited Metro cards. I'll end now.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marzina Wolpiok, followed by Michael Silo. Please begin.
Good evening, Proud Foy and MTA board members. My home station is Ronkonkoma, and I'm flattered with the proposition of my fare being decreased by $5 each ride during peak times. But I understand that Nassau County riders make up most of the Long Island Railroad ridership. It doesn't make sense that they should be paying more when I'm paying less. This is why I'm against flat fares on Metro North Railroad and the Long Island Railroad. We cannot have an increase in the subway and local bus fare to $3. The fare increases for the subway will turn away many riders. Express bus ridership will heavily decrease if you raise the fare to $7.25. I know many people who cannot justify paying that much. They live in areas where there is no subway. I am all for a millionaire's tax. In addition, I know many Staten Island residents who rely on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge and rely on the resident discount. To conclude, I think that flat fares are unfair. We need congestion charges, and we need to have a residence discount on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Our next speaker is Michael Silo, followed by Jane DeRue.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Silo. I live in Staten Island. I work in Manhattan and I ride the express bus. I do not support the removal of the Staten Island discount on the Verrazano tolls and the MTA fare hike. I also work for an insurance company, and we write over 200 million in premiums in New York, and we get charged an MTA tax of 17% on 2% business, which comes to almost $1 million. So if you take into account all the companies that pay, and also besides insurance companies, other companies have to pay an MTA tax to do business in New York. I'd like to where all that money goes to, and where that's being accounted for. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Just wanting to announce that we have been joined in the hearing by Jano Lieber. Thank you so much for joining. Our next speaker is Jane Duru, followed by Evelyn Miraglia.
Hello?
Hi, Jane.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I represent ACASI, African Community Alliance of Staten Island, and I speak on behalf of the community and myself. Already, a lot of us are doing 2 jobs and struggling to make ends meet and trying to cut corners. And a lot of us are essential workers and have not only do we have to pay to go out of the island, but also to visit families. And some of our families don't like to come to Staten Island because of the tolls. We also have children we have to pay bus fares for. So it makes life very difficult. We're already cutting, there is no way for us to cut, including high rents and everything. It appears like the middle class and the poor are being dumped on. I don't even think if there is middle class anymore. We're just the working poor. So for me, I do not believe that there should be fair cuts. I do believe that MTA should be turning profits. I don't understand when they are saying they don't make money. If this was a personal business, it should be making loads and loads of money. So there has to be problem somewhere. MTA should look into itself and see what is going wrong, because if this is somebody's private business, that person will be a billionaire. So I really don't understand why there has to be fair increase every now and then. Fair increase. Thank you again, and I wish you all a good night.
Our next speaker is Evelyn Miraglia, followed by Omar Vera. Just as a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you have registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function. Again, our next speaker is Evelyn Miraglia, followed by Omar Vera.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. My name is Evelyn Moralia, and I'm a Staten Island resident. On the topic of express buses, I live on the South Shore of Staten Island, where express bus routes have been eliminated through the weekends, and one must drive to either the Sim 1 or the Sim 4C routes to board a bus to New York City. On the weekends, seeing a local bus on my end of the island is like seeing God. Unlike the other boroughs that people could walk to a subway, we even have to drive to catch the Staten Island Railway. In 2018-19, the MTA did an overhaul to the express routes, doing new naming conventions and revamping express bus routes. And that must have cost a pretty penny and should have eliminated costs. So what happened to the revenue that project generated? Instead of even revamping of the express routes. You still have the South Shore Express buses going through New Jersey, through on the New Jersey Turnpike, through the Lincoln Tunnel, instead of going through the West Shore Highway and utilizing the HOV lanes on the Staten Island Expressway, Verrazano Bridge, and the Brooklyn Gowanus, and through the Hugh Carey Tunnel to New York. In my area, the SIM 25 and the 26 takes an hour and a half to get to New York City, where the SIM 4 and the 8 and the 6 take 45 minutes to 50 minutes to get downtown, where you can transfer to the subway to get to Midtown or Uptown. But one must drive to the SIM 4 or the 8. So instead of paying these extensive contractual agreements, which are in place in New Jersey to have express buses routed through New Jersey to Midtown, why not change these routes, save on fuel, get people to use the subways in the city? I'm 67 years old and been riding the transit many years, and I just seen how clean these subways are. Where did you get that revenue to clean all the subways?
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Omar Vera, followed by Christopher Greif.
All right. You can hear me, right?
We can.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Greetings, MTA board and staff. I am back after Thursday appearance via Zoom. Now, to recap what I said on Thursday, like this past Thursday, the fact of the matter is, I believe the fare should be back down to $2 the way it was back in the greater part of the 2000s decade. So between 03, 04, and 09. And I also said that with the incoming Biden-Harris administration, we'll be able to get things done, and at least in a much more efficient way than we do right now. And of course, that the U.S. Senate races in the state of Georgia are going to determine whether the Senate will actually be productive or whether they're just going to continue being all me, and all being obstruction. But now today, I'd like to first discuss, well, first I'd like to thank our transit president, Sarah Feinberg, the amazing mother figure of transit here and everywhere. I heard her speech, I think, or no, her announcement at the stations regarding how the MTA is handling the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. She's making sure we're all safe, protected, and all that. And I have to say this. Thank you so much, Sarah, for looking after all of us. Woo! I also thank the rest of you for also working hard to get everyone where they're going. But yes, now before I understand that I'm gonna run a little short in time, but even though this really should be 3 minutes instead of 2, but that's a whole nother discussion to talk about. This week, President-elect Biden is expected to announce a couple more cabinet positions, including one for Attorney General. If in the event that Governor Cuomo gets picked as the Attorney General, we will end up, and he gets confirmed, we will end up having our first woman governor.
Thank you for your comment.
Sorry, is that?
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by Deborah Greif.
I'm here. I'm here.
We can hear you.
Good. Yeah. Yes. Good evening. I'm Christopher D. Greif. I'm here to representing as the Brooklyn DD Council for people with developmental disabilities. And I'd like to remind you, my fellow people with disabilities who do travel, who go to work, who uses their Metro card, we as the councils do not want to see the 30-day or the 7-day pass being discontinued. It is a way of keeping our fellow individuals, people with disabilities, to travel. It's a way of their budget to keep their budget. Especially, some of them do use the Long Island Railroad, which is the Atlantic ticket. They love the trains because they can travel faster from Queens Village all the way back to Brooklyn to Atlantic Terminal, or sometimes to Penn Station. We encourage you, please do not do any cuts of anything on buses or trains. 10 years ago, we had this issue, and I really don't want to see this again. MTA board members, please make sure that these fare cuts or any fare increasements does not hurt the disability population and the senior population. And I hope we can please work together as a team player. I'm Christopher D. Greif. I represent the Brooklyn DD Council Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deborah Greif.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. Good evening. My name is Deborah Greif. I am the chairperson of the Brooklyn Family Support Service Advisory Council. I'm the parent of a young man with developmental disabilities. My council represents families whose children live at home, and I represent us in Albany for our statewide. The reason I'm very concerned about the removal of the 30-day pass and also the 7-day is because people with disabilities and seniors, which I am now, we're on a fixed low income. When we can budget so that it's $63.50 at the moment, that means I can travel anywhere I want in the 5 boroughs without breaking my budget, and I also have enough money to pay for my co-pays on the medication and to be able to eat properly. I also want to make sure that my fellow seniors are in the same position. I also can use Accessoride, which I'm qualified for. Now, Accessoride is $2.75. That can be very expensive for us in the disability community as well as the seniors. So if you need to work with us to make sure we understand there's issues with funding, but please remember we are the poorest of all. Our seniors and people with disabilities are the poorest, and we need to make sure that the 7-day pass and also the 30-day pass stays intact. Thank you.
Thank you. The time is now 7:03 p.m., and at this time, we will be taking a brief break and will resume at 7:15 p.m. During the break, please feel free to take the voluntary survey, which will be visible on your screen, to assist us in understanding the effectiveness of our outreach for these hearings. Thank you. The time is now 7:15 p.m. We have had several speakers register to speak who have either had technical difficulties or have not been able to join the meeting so far. I will call through the remaining speakers now. Once we have exhausted the list, we will leave the hearing open for an additional 15 minutes. If you are registered to speak but have not heard your name called, please indicate in the Q&A function and we will add you to the queue now. Again, if you are registered to speak but have not heard your name called, please indicate in the Q&A function and we will add you to the queue. As an additional reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you have registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function. Our next speaker will be Adrian Horzak, followed by Pavel Katsevel.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Adrian Horchak. I'm a resident of Queens. I don't have a car, so I get around by transit and by cycling. And yeah, I wanted to voice my support for congestion pricing, which would add the tolls to the free bridges currently, since they have no tolls, so you could, charge a little money on those. And I think that the MTA could save some money by not running trains at night, because no one's riding those trains, so it's pointless to keep them running. Like, that's just throwing money away, like in the garbage. So to save resources, which you really have to do, you should not be running trains at night. Like the train, even if there's no room in the train yards, the train can be stopped at 42nd Street, and then the people working on the train can just use the beefed up bus service that everyone else has to use to go home or wherever they need to go afterwards, after a subway shut down. So that's like a common sense move that should be made. That just don't run subways that are empty. That's what I want to bring up. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Pavel Katsevel. Again, as we stated before, we have several speakers that are registered to speak who have either had technical difficulties or have not joined the meeting. I will now call through the full remaining list of speakers. Once we have exhausted the list, we will leave the hearing open for an additional 15 minutes. If you are registered to speak but have not heard your name called, please indicate in the Q&A function and we will add you to the queue. Senator Anna Kaplan. Assemblymember Eric DeLon. Assemblymember-elect Michael Tanusis. Matt Camper. Jason Anthony. Stuart Goldstein. Linda Barron. Sean Abraham. Juan Osario. Adrian Horzak. Guillermo Cancillo. Robert Brown. Zhao Chen. Yuking Liu. John Macbeth. Patrick Johnson. Pavel Katsevel. Jeremy Vargas. Bob D. Jackie Liang. Alexa Jacob. Julie Michaels. Grant Van Wygarden. Giselle Blanco. Philistine Travis. Melena McCone. Tariq Saghi. Gregory Rodriguez. Princess Ben James. Alex Looker. Chris Frankie. Liliana Peralta. Alexander Rotsitsvit. Joseph Donato. Searing Sherpa. Jillian Lazarides. Key Lee. Francisco Roboto. Amanda K. Johnson. Carmela Puleo. Seth Rosenberg. Megan Mimhi. If you are registered to speak but have not heard your name called, please indicate in the Q&A function and we will add you to the queue. We will now leave the hearing open for an additional 15 minutes. Thank you so much. The public hearing will close at 7:37 p.m. If you were registered to speak but missed your name being called, please indicate that in the Q&A. Thank you. The public hearing will close at 7:37 p.m. If you were registered to speak but missed your name being called, please indicate that in the Q&A. Thank you. The public hearing will close at 7:37 p.m. If you were registered to speak but missed your name being called, please indicate that in the Q&A. Thank you. The public hearing will close at 7:37 p.m. If you were registered to speak but missed your name being called, please indicate that in the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This concludes the third of 8 virtual fare and toll hearings. Please visit new.mta.info/2020 hearings to register for an upcoming hearing. As a final reminder, in addition to the virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding fare and crossing charges, virtual public hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Thank you so much and have a good evening.